Welcome to LOA Today. I'm Walt Jason.
With me today is life coach and LOA teacher Joel Elston.
This is your daily dose of happy. We are so happy you decided to join us today. I just realized something, Joel. As the music was playing, it occurred to me, you've often expressed the opinion on the show, I'm happy to coach people about money. I'm happy to coach people about health and so forth. Don't ask me about relationships. We're now, for like the second week in a row, going to be talking about relationships.
I know.
That's kind of interesting.
Yeah, I've evolved apparently.
I guess. Yeah, that's a good thing.
Yeah, it really is. I can tell you how to do relationships real well.
Oh, I got you. Okay, yeah. Well, that's a good friend, you know.
Self-implementation is not my strength, apparently.
Well, this is actually a continuation of the interview I did earlier today with a guest named Lauren. I loved her name, Lauren Salon. I mean, that's like that just sounds.
She sounds famous. She sounds like she should be.
Yeah. And a fabulous interview. We had a great time. We did this We actually did a 60-minute show in 90 minutes.
Oh, well, great time.
It was really flowing, and I didn't want to stop it because we ended up talking about something that I think we're going to touch on here a little bit, and that is the challenges involved for single males, particularly young single males, but actually all single males today in the modern internet age, because it's a freaking mess out there. Now, that's not the actual topic. The topic we're going to talk today is about stopping chasing people, because you posted something about that on both your Instagram and your TikTok, I guess.
Yes.
That became, but perfect tie-in to what we were talking about earlier and what we'll talk about here.
Absolutely. And the concept, and this gets into it has a definite law of attraction. Don't chase anything is a big topic. When you chase something too hard, it runs from you. If you want something too bad, you can't get it. But this is more of a talking about relationships or talking about friendships or whatever. But when you get into a situation where you're the chaser, it's a needy. You're needy, and that's the energy you're putting out. And for you to chase, somebody pretty much has to be running. It's that concept. So I had a lesson in my teens that was it's sort of relevant to this, but we'll update it here because my teen years were way back in the 1900s. I had no trouble. I was grateful. I had a lot of dates. I dated a lot of girls. There was one girl in particular that I had a major crush on throughout high school. She was just, in my mind, that was it. So I noticed, and this is not healthy stuff, but I noticed the dynamic. So, I would go out with pretty much somebody every week, and it was like, okay, great, or whatever. And that person I went out with that week would call me or follow up or say, hey, I want to go out. I want to go more, whatever. And then the one I wanted was never available.
Yeah.
and I kept thinking, like, the ones I would go out with, and I wasn't mean, but I was just like, whatever. They chased me more. I'm chasing this one girl, and it's like, oh my gosh, I started to notice that dynamic. And so I was wondering why everybody I went out with was just, the girls would call me, they would leave notes on my car, and the one I wanted to go out with just ignored me. So I quit chasing her. And when I quit chasing her, then she started coming to me. It was a whole different
interesting dynamic.
It's like, I noticed she's like, because I used to, check in with her, stop by her locker, just chat with her. And I would just walk by her and say, hey, how you doing? Just not negative, but just a different energy. And then she started coming up to me and talking, and it was, I just noticed that dynamic that when I was the chaser, she was the runner. And when I quit chasing, she came toward me. And that's played out in other scenarios throughout my life, but it's still playing games. I don't like it. I'm not saying that's a healthy way to do things, but the context of the topic is we have people that are constantly chasing the concept of a relationship or the concept of a job, and they get lost in what's there. They get lost in the reality of, okay, what is available? I'm chasing the wrong things. A lot of times people chase the wrong things, and that's you get caught up in the chase. The chase signals lack. When you're chasing something,
Mhm.
the energy you're putting out is lacking it, and that's, as we know, when our law of attraction talk, lack attracts lack. So
Right.
the dangers of chasing and instead of attracting is you will never catch what you're chasing, but you can always attract what you're attracting, and it's the nuance between the two are really important. And your mental health and how you feel about, if you're constantly chasing, your self-esteem is low. Nobody wants to be with me. Nobody wants to, versus taking a minute and working on attraction. And that's life. I mean, we're not just talking about relationships. We're talking about certain jobs or certain
Mhm.
situations. Just, you get stuck on one course of action and you think this is the only way to do it. And I have a friend that great lady, she has this image of the guy she wants to date. She's been
Mhm.
divorced for a while. She has two kids. It's a great person. She has a good job, but she keeps chasing this image of what a relationship she could look like. She has her best friend has, and she doesn't like it when I point out. I won't mention her name, but her best friend has a really good relationship with a man, and
Mhm.
so she sort of says, I want to go get that same quote unquote same kind of man.
Yeah.
And so instead of seeing what arrives to her and shows up, there's been a lot of quality men that have showed up in her life, but it's
Mhm.
not the image that she thinks. And so she has about the shelf life of a year to a year and a half of these relationships, and they
Yeah.
they end the same way every time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
And I
because
love that phrase too, shelf life, because that's pretty much what it is.
Yeah, because the cycle continues, and there's
Mhm.
then the reality is like, and then she said, "Well, I don't know why I can't ever keep a relationship." I said, "Well, because the five guys that came through that you loved, that didn't love, that would have done anything for you, you totally ignored them because they didn't match that image that you think your friend you got to mimic from your friend."
It's a great point. And
Yeah,
it also ties into something. This actually ties again into where the conversation was going in the earlier show. We didn't actually touch on this, but it's an important piece. Well, we touched on it very briefly because we touched on the concept of what's often called a high status or a high valued partner.
right.
And the idea is whether you're male or female, you're looking for that high status partner. The challenge there is that means literally everybody, if you follow that particular thought pattern, everybody's aiming for somebody who's a higher status than they are,
Right.
which is it's a little problematic at that point. But that it creates a very unfortunate dynamic in that, like you said, you can automatically eliminate people who could potentially be very good partners for you simply because they aren't high enough status.
Yes,
And
exactly.
that that's a real problem
But
because I mean, if
it,
you make that your standard, you can end up like your friend who never ends up in a relationship because everybody you're trying to aim for is too high status by your standards.
right, and and what comes with that is you have an image that these are the metrics. What matters in a relationship to you? What are you looking for?
Mhm.
Is it security, somebody that's trustworthy? In my mind, obviously you have to be able to trust somebody. That's
Mhm.
really big. Trust is a huge issue. uh
Sure.
me, you got to have a sense of humor. I put that way up
Absolutely.
there. You got to have a sense of humor.
Mhm.
uh
Preferably a really off the wall sense of humor like yours.
Very weird sense of
Yes.
humor. I mean, there
Mhm.
is no such thing as too weird of humor for me,
That's
as
right.
you know.
That's
So,
right.
not that this is a main thing for me per se, but the idea that they have the ability to take care of themselves. And,
Oh, yes.
you know, what I mean by that, it isn't, and I don't want to be disparaging to anyone, but I don't want somebody because I have some means and some money that's just there for that.
Mm.
You know what I'm saying? So somebody that has the ability, not they don't have, I obviously, if I ever, which by the way, is not happy for ever marry anybody, I,
Mm.
everything's fine with that. But I don't want someone that's just hanging out just to get the money part or just thinking they're going to get
Yes.
the money part. That's a sort of, so I'm making sure that trustworthy. I love intelligent people. I, I would love somebody smarter than me. I
Mm.
love that. I like people that are very smart, and I recognize. I know some people that, I have my areas of expertise I am smart in, but I like
Oh yeah.
somebody, they could be smarter than me in another area. I like that.
Mm. Mhm.
Yeah, so Alexa thoughts, I said Alexa apparently. But
Well, she has her opinion too. I mean, that's a
yeah,
great
she, I don't think well, her statement was, I don't know, I'm not sure if I can help you with that. And I'm like, well,
That's probably a fair truth.
yeah,
Right,
clearly you
just right there.
cannot,
Thank you,
Alexa.
Alexa, for telling us the truth.
Yeah.
Yes.
but so when you chase an image or you chase an idea, uh you get stuck in the chase, and not you often, because of the chase, you miss what is there, what is
Yes. Exactly.
available.
Yeah. It's an interesting point about the chase, because that actually does come up in a moderately positive way in a lot of the teachings that go out to single men today.
Ah,
And the way it's presented is it's kind of on the one hand, on the other hand, okay?
right,
Because they definitely promote the idea you don't want to be needy, you don't want to be chasing, you want to attract.
right,
They don't actually necessarily say it as attract, but that's pretty much what they mean.
right.
However, there's also, you made reference earlier to what was the word you used to describe it? Manipulation, I think it was. Like you can be manipulative. The experience that you had with the young woman who you had gone out with some dates on some dates with her, and you were really interested in her, and she was not showing interest, so you stopped showing interest, and all of a
Yeah.
sudden she's interested. That's a very common effect that happens quite a bit.
Yes. Yes.
And there are a lot of teachers in the male single male realm who teach that as an actual thing to do. They label it as either a boomerang or as a push pull. And
Right.
what they're basically saying is, don't always come on to her, take your energy away, show disinterest and so forth, and then flip back and forth between showing interest, not showing interest, show interest, which is manipulative. But
And
it also does have a positive, attractive effect.
it has an attractive effect, but stuff like that, to me, as who I am today, healed as I am in the life I
Yeah,
have today, that's way too confusing for me.
I hear you.
Yeah, I mean, I
It
can't
doesn't
keep.
also doesn't work well for the ADHD, right?
Yeah, no, I just can't keep up. So, but here's a mini example of that. Like, I am constantly baffled by, and again, I work with females and males, the 22-year-old females and the 25 and under males. Kind of, that's sort of my wheelhouse. And just everything from, I texted them and they took 25 minutes to respond.
Yeah,
So I am not going to respond until after 25 minutes.
exactly. Oh yeah, yeah.
And I'm like, how do you keep up with that? Just answer them. Just, yeah, just
You have
answer
to have a
them.
timer just to keep your relationship going.
Yeah, yeah, and you have this. Some people get into this thing. If you care about somebody or your friends, it's like, why? Well, I got to wait for them to text. Or
Mhm.
I'm not texting them because I've texted for. I don't. How do you even remember that? I'm too busy doing life to. It's like, now I've had friends, and not relationships, but just friends. Like, I realize, okay, I've texted you 5 times in a row with no response. I need to figure out what's going on. Are you okay? But
Mhm.
I'm not getting into the keeping score, or somehow that I need to play aloof. It's just, those are the things that they may work, but at the end of the day, they're not a foundation for it's all part of manipulation. You would not want any relationship built on manipulation.
Right. The moment that communication becomes manipulative, it's no longer communication of the kind that you want it to be.
Right.
It is a form of communication. You just don't want to go there.
Well, you're just trying to guess what everybody means, and it's just,
Mhm.
the one of my clients. A lot of my clients will get in these situations. They break up with their girlfriend, and they want to play every scenario out. Well, what if I
Oh
said
yeah.
this? And I'm going, look, we can rehearse. I can make a lot of money just sitting here for an hour
Oh
rehearsing
God,
every
you could
possible scenario.
you could pay for the house, I'm
Yeah,
sure.
yeah. But I am not going to. That's not. It doesn't matter, because you can never rehearse it and get it right.
Right.
It is, if you need to talk about it, we'll talk about it. But you're playing a mind game on yourself, that somehow you'll get there. So this idea that I gotta go, all the attraction piece is lost a lot today. And a lot of these teachers or social media influencers, their advice is sometimes very toxic, very
Oh yeah.
demeaning to females, or very demeaning to males, or
Both.
telling them both sides are getting there. It's really sad. It really is.
It's sad, one of the reasons I wanted to do the show that I did earlier today with Lauren and doing the show as a follow up with you is because these conversations need to be held. They need to be held in the public space and the
Sure.
online space, because until they are, they're going to be dominated by the other side, by the people who are pushing the manipulative tactics, who are pushing the red pill ideas, who are pushing the females be totally feminine ideas. I mean, the whole masculinity and femininity thing, that heck, we could do 5 shows on that one, probably
Yeah.
10, maybe 15,
Yeah.
because it is a big part of the way things are taught today. I expressed this opinion earlier, and I'm going to express it to you as well. I really think that masculinity and femininity is way overplayed. I mean, I'm not saying it's not important. It is important, but not nearly as important as it's portrayed out in the wild.
Well, it's the image of what a man is, the deep voice, the strength, and all the other, all the good facial hair, all these silly things that that sort of people consider masculine. I look at there's everyone has some feminine energy and some masculine energy. Everybody.
Sure.
Guys don't like to talk about that, but the kind side. I mean, most men are not viewed as nurturers, but I know a lot of good dads.
The best dads are.
Yeah, I think I probably would be defined by most people as relatively masculine, and I adopt children from foster care, take care of them by myself. So that you can, when you're comfortable in it, you do not allow that to become a metric of what matters. But one of my clients today was asking me, he's 17 and he's 5'9", and good looking kid, 5'9". He doesn't look short to me, but he's like, he said, if you're not 6 foot, you're nobody. I said, buddy, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. I said, who's measuring that? Who cares?
Yeah.
I mean, I've never even thought about it that way, and that's a message he heard. He heard a woman on TikTok say, if the minimum requirement is a real 6 foot, nothing less. And I'm like, well, but in his mind, his masculinity was built on his height. And he said, Joel, what happens if I don't grow? I don't see what matters. That's one of the most bizarre things I've ever heard.
And yet it is fairly common.
Very common.
because the statistics back it up too, by the way. I mean, most of these, well, maybe not most, a large chunk of these belief systems arise out of the dating app.
Yes.
And in the dating app, if you are a male and you aren't listing yourself honestly, hopefully, as at least 6 foot, you're going to get a lot less responses. That's just the truth of it. Now, out in the real world, that's not, you can throw that one out the window. But because of the dominant nature of dating apps, that becomes a thing.
Yeah.
And the really sad part is, if you look at the numbers that the actual dating apps themselves have accumulated, because they do sometimes publish that information, 90% of the population are chasing 10% of the other side of the other gender.
Right.
And it's both ways. It's both of them.
Both ways. Yeah. And that's what happens. And we were talking before the show about a client of mine. I think that was before the show, right? About the dude on the dating app.
I believe so. Yes.
Yeah, we did. Yeah. Okay.
Well, if it's repetitive, we apologize in advance.
Walt and I have conversation before the show, and then we jump right into the show. So I don't remember.
And we have trouble keeping them apart. I mean,
yeah. Except the inappropriate conversations, which we clearly leave off the air.
Those are easier to keep apart for some reason. Yeah, I'm not sure.
But I have this client. He's an outstanding man. He makes $250,000 a year. He's 28 years old. He's a little heavy. He's probably 15 pounds overweight. He's slightly balding. And he has the best sense of humor. He just somebody, he loves to fish. He loves to do outdoor stuff. He's this great guy. Dating app, he gets no response, none,
right?
Nothing. He doesn't drink, so he can't go to bars. So he's like, where do I even, he understands. He said, when I meet somebody, my energy attracts people, and I make them laugh. Don't ever underestimate the value of making a woman laugh. That's the
Oh,
time.
absolutely. That's
Yeah.
powerful.
Yeah, that's powerful. And that's old school there. You make
Oh,
them
very old
laugh.
school.
And
Yeah.
and so he said, I got that, but the apps take that opportunity away.
Mm-hmm.
And like he said, when I listen, I'm 5'8", I'm this, I'm that, and he said, just crickets. Nobody.
Mm-hmm.
I love to travel. All the stuff. He likes to cook. He likes to, he says, I'm just not into working out. I'm not that kind of guy. I like adventures, but I like to exercise outside ski and, snowboarding and, climbing, rappelling mountains, all that stuff he does. So,
Yeah.
gets no traction whatsoever at all.
And that's why for most people, I don't care whether you're male or female, for most people, the apps really are not the way to go. And
No.
I've even had confirmation of that from guests on the show who use the app successfully. They have actually met their partners through the apps. Well, even they will say, no, I wouldn't recommend going through the apps for the very reasons that we're talking about. And just to point out something, I'm sure you pointed this out to him as well. But for those who are asking themselves, okay, if I'm something similar to this young man and I have similar issues, so I'm not getting attention on the apps, what can I do? The creative thing to do is to ask yourself, what are my interests? Identify them, and then find something in that interest. And the nice thing is some of the things that you mentioned that he was into are great for finding women. I mean, there were a few of them there that was like, if he went to events about that, they'd all be women. There wouldn't be that many men there.
Yeah. Well, there's a great example of I have a 24-year-old client. One of my favorite people in the world. He has Asperger's, but he's brilliant. He's a genius. He's going to be eventually. He is in process of becoming a nuclear engineer.
Wow.
Yeah, and so he puts a real picture, undoctored. He looks nerdy. He doesn't care.
Mm-hmm.
He's got the big nerdy glasses, curly hair. He goes 100% nerd. And then he starts listing, I am a geek. I'm into anime. I love comic books. I play Magic the Gathering. And he just lists it. He lays it all out there. He said, I'm not that attractive. I'm not that fun to be around. He gets tons. He gets tons of responses.
Really interesting.
Yeah. He just
very
goes
interesting.
All in. And at first I'm like, that sounds pretty negative. He goes, Joel, it's not I'm all truth. He said, I'm a happy person, but let's not try to present something I'm not. And he said, I am not a 10. I'm not expecting 10s to reply to me.
Yes. Okay. Yeah.
And he gets several dates, has a lot of fun with it.
That's a really important point that I want to touch on, because we talked about the high status person that you're trying to attract. He's not trying to attract that high status person. He's basically taking that off the table entirely. He's looking at people not in terms of how high their status is, but what does he like about them?
Well, he put that in his description. He said, look, I want somebody that can laugh. If you don't like anime, but just go to conventions with me, learn it. I'll go learn stuff you like. But I don't care if you're a little overweight. I don't care if you're a little geeky yourself. So all of that, he comes very endearing in his response.
Yeah.
And a lot of women are going through the same thing. I see 90% of my clients are male. So.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have a bias toward their opinion, but the females go through the same thing in a little bit different way.
Right.
And the premise that you're always expected to, I can't date anybody below 6 feet if you're a woman, or they have to have this look, or they have to have this kind of car. Again, this guy's going to be a nuclear engineer and probably make $700,000 a year in his first job. I mean, it's that, and he has very proud of his Toyota Corolla that has 340,000 miles. Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
He said, he fixes his own car. He loves dabbling his own car. He said, my goal is to put $1 million. If you're worried about my Corolla, wrong guy.
That's also a very confident guy. And it brings in a really important point here about the role of confidence, not just in relationships, but in that stop chasing things.
Yes.
you don't really stop chasing things unless you're confident. If you don't feel confident, you're going to want to chase because you don't feel like you can get it any other way.
Well,
But
yes.
if you feel confident, then that gives you the ability and the justification to say, well, yeah, I can wait to attract something because I'm confident that I'm going to get what I need.
Yes. And again, with one of the antidotes to the need of the desperate chase, or I need to find somebody, or I'm lonely. As long as you're programming that inner dialogue to match that, then the chasing seems necessary.
Yeah, exactly.
Versus understanding then, and the becoming authentic and being able to realize that this is going to be okay. But everything, again, social media makes everything an immediate crisis. If you don't find your woman, because there's 10% of the women that will only date whatever your stat was there, and the guys are the young guys are like, I have no shot. I don't have any shot here whatsoever.
And when you go in with that attitude, unfortunately, the law of attraction says, okay, that's what we're going to deliver.
Well, and also, I think tell me if this is logical. So one of the things I'm really noticing a huge uptick in, while people breaking up, the breakups are always bad, but I am noticing like some extreme psychiatric relationships to breakups now. And I think this might play a role, because when you think you've had the right woman, and what one of my clients recently broke up with a 2-year relationship, and he keeps saying, I'll never find somebody. I'll never find somebody. Where would I find them? I go, well, you just broke up yesterday. So let's, but it is, I think it's compounding people's beliefs that I had one and she got away. How am I ever going to find another woman?
And I believe a big piece of this is the fact that confidence isn't something that just gets handed to us. We learn it through our life experiences.
Yes.
And one of the ways we learn it through our life experiences is by going through things like breakups.
Yes.
The breakups are, especially that first one. We've talked about that one before, right? That first breakup is absolutely the worst. Yeah. It's horrible. But after you've been broken up with, 10, 15, 20 times, after a while, I say, oh, okay, well, there's another one. Big deal. It just doesn't bother you as much. And it's because your confidence has gotten bigger. You feel like you feel more secure in who you are.
Yeah.
You can still have other confidence issues, but that one, it starts to fill in some gaps just by going through all that.
I know my last breakup wasn't that long ago, and I mourned for what I told you about, like 15, 20 seconds or 30. I forget. It was quick.
It was that long, huh? Okay.
Yeah. I was like, yeah, okay, that's sad. And then moved on. It's like, but no disrespect. I don't want to be disrespectful. It was a little more than that. But I also, the reason I broke up and all that was there was just no other option. And so the idea that moving forward was going to be the thing, but it does, I don't sit there and think about it, because when I'm interested in another relationship, I have no doubt I'll find one. It's that it's just not interested right now, but I will if I want to.
Yeah. So the point is that there's actually a good side to going through all this, because that's one of the ways we gain confidence.
Yes, completely.
There are other ways, of course, that we can gain confidence. And I want to touch on those, because I believe that self-confidence / self-love / self-esteem, whatever self-dash that you want to put together, there are like 20 words you can put after that self-hyphen. But whatever one you want to label it with, that's probably the best thing we can build, whatever way we can. And the reason I say that is the more of that we have, not only are we less likely to chase, but we're also likely to feel good in the process.
Yes.
And we both know how important it is to feel good to attract what you want in life. If you're not feeling good, you're not going to attract it.
Absolutely. And that your emotions dictate what you're attracting. That's the signals you're sending out to the universe. If you're not feeling good, you're going to send that out there. And if it's not feeling good about relationships, that's going to be a repetitive pattern.
Exactly. So it really behooves us to build that self-esteem piece. So let's talk about that a little bit. What helps us to build self-confidence, self-love, self-esteem? And I think there are both things that we can do and things that we can avoid. There are two different aspects to this. But where would you take it first?
Well, one of the things, and this suggestion is never taken, by the way, I'll let you know, it's probably the most powerful suggestion. Get off the damn social media. Yeah, because you're looking at the standard right there. You're lowering yourself, thinking, I don't look like that. I'm, half the people that look like that don't really look like
Don't
that.
look like that. Yeah.
Yeah, but you're in your mind, you're thinking everybody's perfect. They got perfect teeth. They got perfect bodies. They got perfect
Mhm.
So there's
Yeah.
there's a programming out there that unless you're perfect, you're not in the arena at all. So
Mm.
social media could be one thing. Now, since nobody takes that suggestion, so let's
Well, we had to put it out there. I mean, it
yeah,
was just
yeah,
kind of a requirement.
yeah. It's like, okay, that's step one if you could. But the other thing is, look at reality. Do your own checklist. I'm a good person. I do care about people. Start doing your own internal dialogue, because any lack of self-esteem or any of the self-dash is taking place in the subconscious portion of your brain.
Mm.
So, the programming there comes from something. You've been embarrassed, you've been rejected, so there you feel less than, and that the root of that is programmed in the subconscious. And as we talk about frequently, the only access to the subconscious is through repetitive reframing. That's the only
Mm.
access. You have
Mhm.
to, the conscious brain, I can change my opinion instantly.
Mhm.
It's like, oh, okay, I don't like. But if it's stored subconsciously, I can't flip that switch directly, but I can, it is that reprogramming, reframing, that stopping the internal dialogue that I talk about constantly, that is supporting the negative things. So you work on that internal dialogue. That's a slower process, but you reward it with evidence as well, where, I am I know for me, uh, I'm honest. I care about people. I do philanthropic things. I can go through I'm not trying to brag, but I'm saying I have these things that I know to be true. Now, there was a
Mhm.
time in my life where none of that was true at all, but it's true now. And
Mhm.
so, you can work on that by reprogramming. Also, when journaling, I know you're a big fan of mirror work, and
Mhm.
mirror work can also access that real well, from what I'm
Oh, yeah.
understanding. And
Oh, yeah. It's actually a way to quickly accelerate self-esteem growth.
yes,
It, it,
Eh,
it's it's brutal in its own way,
yeah,
but it pays off. It pays
yes,
dividends.
yeah, and and I like your term. It's probably an accelerator of the process as well.
Right. Yeah.
So you have that, and also being around people that see your value. Being
Mm.
around, also having the ability to accept a compliment.
Mhm.
It's there's a tendency for us to not accept compliments. I anytime a client is doing really well and they've changed their life, and a young man told me this the other day. He graduated college, and he sent me a very nice text, and he said, I couldn't have done this without you. And my standard
Mm.
response is, thank you, but you did the hard work,
Right.
like turning back to him, which is my standard response to that.
And it's
And he
true.
said, can you just shut up and take the compliment?
Which is also a very good point.
And I said, yes, thank you very much. I appreciate you pointing that out. He said, I did the work, but it wasn't possible without you. So
Mm.
yeah,
That's appreciation. Yeah,
yeah,
that's
yeah.
that's genuine
So
appreciation.
yeah, so don't block that. A lot of people worried about arrogance or whatever. Don't
Yeah.
worry. Have that true view of yourself. And if you need to work on some things, like, you know, in general, there was a time when, back in the middle of my gambling addiction, there was a really easy way to tell if I was lying.
Hmm.
My lips were moving. So yeah, there was no truth coming out back in the day. I was just lying for the sake of lying. Uh, but in today's world, if I tell you yes, it's yes.
Mm.
And I'll also be glad to tell you no if it's no. But
Mhm.
there isn't any of that going on. And so you when you do your self inventory and the improvement you've done, you can also use those as tools of evidence to help support the reprogramming we're trying to do.
Right,
But
right.
and a lot of this stuff can even be in childhood. We have a lot of damage that takes place in childhood. We've talked about that
Mm.
before. But working on self-esteem, it requires self-reflection. It requires the ability to stop the negative thinking patterns, the illogical thinking patterns, and the false memories that are supporting that. And,
Mhm.
well, nobody likes me, or she rejected me. And, we all get rejected. And, one of my best friends growing up, he amazed me. Everywhere we would go, we'd go to concerts, we'd go to bars, and this guy ended up, and he was average looking guy. He ended up with a girl every single time. He was
Oh
the
yeah.
he was the master. He was just, we at
I
first I
had a
was like,
friend like that too. I know exactly what you mean.
yeah,
And it it's both educational and intimidating at the same time to be out
yeah,
with somebody like that.
yeah. And he clearly, and is his own, he's an average looking guy.
Mhm.
He's out with a group of guys, and probably the least attractive guy in the group, and picked up most women. And
Right.
and so he was very confident. He talked to them very confidently. He made them laugh. He always had a great sense of humor, and he was a magnet. He just put that energy out. He just was constantly attracted, and it was just the most. He had the when it came to that, the greatest self esteem and self belief that I've ever seen. Just and
Yeah.
it paid off.
Yeah, and it was probably at such a level he didn't even have to think about it. It was
It,
just natural to him.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
and today, like law of attractions, obviously I was not doing law of attraction back then, or understanding it. I was doing it, wasn't understanding it.
Just
Uh,
not the way you wanted.
yeah, I was doing the exact opposite of what I was trying to accomplish. But like today, I told you, when it comes to things right now, I everything comes easily now. Everything,
Mm,
there's nothing that I don't. It's like, yeah, I attract, have an abundance. I have this, I have that. Whatever I want, I can easily go get.
yeah. You mentioned something a moment ago. You actually referred to it a couple of times. You talked about lists, people having lists of things and
Yeah.
so forth.
Yes.
That came up also in the previous show that I did with Lauren and Anne Marie, in that women in particular, when it comes to relationships, primary relationships, will often make written lists of the characteristics of their partner
Yes.
that they're looking for.
Yes.
Men don't do that as much. We tend to more make it lists in our heads. Very few of us actually write it down. But there's something to be said for the written part, because when you write it down, what you're really doing is you're not only identifying what you want, you're also identifying what you don't want. And
Yes.
that act of doing both, identifying what you want and what you don't want, is a confidence builder.
It is.
You become less amorphous, you become more defined. You define yourself just by the way that you do that. And that translates when
It
you're out
does.
in the wild meeting people.
As long as but a lot of times, and absolutely, you're saying that correctly. However, a lot of times people are writing down things that it's not exactly what they write down what's sort of expected.
Oh, that's a problem. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like the friend I was telling you about. That's, she sees her best friend's relationship and thinks that that's what she's going after. So it's not going to happen. It's just a whole
Right.
different scenario. And also being realistic, in your, I have work with a lot of majorly wealthy people. And so I have a client, he's 55. His super attractive girlfriend, amazingly attractive girlfriend, is 23.
Mm.
No judgment.
Mhm.
They have a great. So one night he's asking me. He said, Joel, do you think she would love me without my money? And I go,
Good
and
question. Very good question.
I said, well, are you fucking kidding me? Of course she wouldn't.
I love how subtle you are. You're just so subtle the way these
I said,
happen.
of course she wouldn't. And I said, there's nothing wrong with that. Let's understand your value and the ability to provide. You're a nice guy. You provide security. But you wouldn't be with her if she were 250 pounds.
Yeah, how about that?
Let's be fair.
Yeah.
And so, it's like, oh, okay. It's, the owner of the Los Angeles Raiders, his last name is Davis. And is Al Davis' son. I forget. Mark Davis is his name.
Mm.
Okay. Anybody that doesn't know him, just Google his picture real quick, and I won't need to explain anything else. So anyway, he's 70 years old and has the absolute worst haircut in the history of haircuts. So, so with that being said, his very attractive, young, super fit Asian girlfriend. So one day somebody was asking him about his girlfriend. He said, yes, she did not know I was a billionaire when we met. she just liked my smile. And everybody just laughs like, yeah, you're famous, you're well known. I'm sure she approached you and said, what a great smile. Oh, this a benefit, you're a billionaire. he believes that. It's unlikely he's listening, so thank goodness I'm not going to embarrass him, but it's all over social media. And he wouldn't care because he is a billionaire owner of an NFL team. He does fine. So
he does perfectly fine.
Yeah.
Yes.
So,
he has no issue there.
And by the way, I'm not making fun of people, but I'm talking about reality. And but when you see that, you'll often see older men with much younger women, and it would be I have be honest with you, I've never seen a drastically older man with a much younger woman that was poor.
Yeah, that would be pretty rare.
Yeah.
Not impossible, but rare.
Yeah. Like, my 70, the hot 25-year-old girl and my 70-year-old boyfriend who's on Medicaid and has no money and only gets Social Security. I've never heard that.
Yeah, in fact, as you spell it out that clearly, it makes it really obvious about why we don't hear it very often.
Yeah. So, and again, but you also have to understand what matters. And in fact, in a survey, if I don't know where you're going down this path, I'd pull this survey up. But they asked women, especially women of childbearing years, because this matters. The top 5 things they're looking for in a man. And the first one, it isn't being rich, but the ability to provide.
Yeah, it's a distinction. It's a very important distinction. Yeah,
because the ability to provide and provide security for the family. So they might be, in law school and going to be a lawyer. They don't have to have the money now, but have that potential. Someone of childbearing years, it may be not interested in high school dropout with no direction. I'm not being critical, but just looking at that. It surprisingly, looks was like number 4 or 5.
Yeah.
It was, at least in this survey. Now, in reality, on the apps, it goes the other way. But the premise that, when a woman and man get together with the woman being of childbearing years, she literally is nesting, providing, who can take care of this, who can provide security, who can take care of the family. It's not it's very seldom a conscious inventory, but they measure that.
By the way, I want to make a comment about the app. So maybe this will be the last one. Hopefully, it'll be the last one. But we've made a number of comments to show where the weaknesses of the apps are. The biggest weakness is also the biggest strength, and it's important to recognize what that strength is. What is it? The first thing that an app always shows you, no matter whether you're male, female, no matter what you're looking for. What's the first thing they show you? They show you a great big photograph.
Yes.
And then they show you another great big photograph. This should give you a very clear clue about how the apps are oriented. They're oriented completely on looks.
Yes.
So anyone who comes to the conclusion that the apps are going to give them anything other than looks-driven results is deceiving themselves.
Absolutely, because you don't get the energy and the stuff we talked about. So it's okay, but that's where the 10% goes after the 10%. That's right. That's what matters. There are apps that literally have rich men, and it's based on their wealth. I'm looking for I forget the name of that app, but there's they're basically sugar daddies. They're looking for that, and and again, it's there, but it's understanding the connection of what we're after, and again, talking about relationships in general, but the fulfillment and what you're programmed to want. We have an instinctive, like, who would not want someone that's very loyal, that would be there no matter what, that shows up and no matter what happens, and I trust this person completely. They will provide for our kids, all that. That seems like, wow, that's just it. And then yet there's these other factors that you're programmed to say, well, he's not that good looking, he's not athletic, he's a little heavy. You look at that and it feels, I think a lot of that is social media influences,
Social media definitely amplifies it. I think that's certainly true. I think this has actually been around for ages.
It's been around. Yeah. The amplification is more my point. And and the there's a guy that was doing street interviews with they just asking random young ladies what's the minimum amount of tell me the minimum requirements for your future husband.
Oh, okay.
And I don't know if he was obviously not a scientific study, but so this one stood out in mind. She's a bigger woman, and she's like, he has to be at least 6'1". He has to make at least $400,000 a year.
Woo!
He has, and she went through the list, and the guy's not making commentary. He's just, but I'm thinking, wow,
Good luck
that's
with that.
good luck. But in her mind is a minimum number of like, the odds of finding, I don't know the statistics of finding a male under 30 making 400 grand a year. It's not good.
It's pretty low.
Yeah.
It's pretty low. Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't quit your day job.
Yeah. And another thing too, like young people get the idea that everybody is going to be Mr. Beast and make $400 million a year on social media. It's money gets diluted. When they realize, I got to go get a job at the grocery store making $17 an hour, and that's a good wage at the grocery store, and it's not the same thing. So there's just a lot of, we live in times where there's a lot of distorted views and images, and it affects how we're feeling, what we are chasing. So we're chasing something often that doesn't even exist.
That's a really great point. And it's so easily overlooked, because I think people do overlook the fact that the stuff they're asking for doesn't really exist out there. They're dreaming so high pie in the sky that they make it impossible for themselves to succeed.
Yes.
And it raises a very interesting question in my mind, which is, to what degree is our subconscious mind driving that?
I'm a believer your subconscious mind drives everything.
True enough.
It is the solution. It's the problem and the solution, your subconscious mind, almost always. So,
Yeah.
but again, not to keep constantly blaming social media. Social media amplifies that through the subconscious brain as well.
Yeah, it does. And it does it very effectively.
Yes. Yeah.
Designed to just keep pressing those hot buttons over and over and over.
Yeah. And you look at it, and it's normal to have a $250,000 Porsche, a house on the lake, and not have to work somehow, and you're 26 years old. It's just that's normal.
Yeah. And interesting how it shapes our lives in general. The need for a relationship, the need to procreate, the need to have family and so forth. A lot of people feel that need. It's very dominant. And yet, look at all the different ways we find to distort it to the point that we distort our lives.
Yes.
And it shows up in patterns that play out over and over again in our lives. So look at how many times we've talked about people who they keep making the same mistake with dating partners.
Yes.
And they keep dating the same people over and over again, different face, but basically the same person over and over and over again. And it takes a therapist or a coach sometimes to point out, you're doing this. We don't even notice it.
No, it seems normal. I did this to a friend, I don't know, this 15 years ago, 10 years ago. He had that pattern, and it is, this is sort of cruel. He would date these women, and he'd find the same basic woman, and usually almost always a little over a year, they'd break up. And usually a very dramatic, screaming breakup, and police sometimes had to be involved, kind of thing. So he had 3 of those in a row. So of course he met the new woman, who was nothing like the other women, of course.
Of course, yes.
Yeah. And so I basically, I had 3 other friends. I said, look, I'm going to write down a date, and let's see who gets closest to the police being called breakup, And so we all wrote down the date, and I put, and I forget the date itself, but I put like 1 year and 3 days, because that was the average of the last. Walt, I wish I had my friends here to literally. The police were called at 12:05 a.m. on that date, and the breakup happened. Wow. Yeah. It happened the same way as the other, because and he's a good friend. He actually stopped doing that and is in a great relationship now. But he identified after that, especially after I told him, we picked the date. it's so conditioned in us. We pick the date, and he said, I got to do something differently. So, when you keep saying, oh, this is the picture of what I want, it's like, this lady that she's a librarian, and she came to me a couple years ago, and she said, look, I keep getting in relationships, and she makes probably 80 grand a year, good money for a librarian, I guess. And she said, I struggle constantly financially. And I keep finding myself, I'm attracted to men who have blue collar jobs, nothing wrong with that. But it basically is just, they get together and they just financially can't make it. You know what I mean? It's just apparent they wouldn't be able to do it. And I said, okay, so your metric that you're looking for is to date somebody or find somebody more able to provide if you're going to have kids and all that. And she goes, yeah. But yet she kept going out on dates with the same guy. And I said, so she said, I met this guy, and he's really nice. He likes dogs. He likes this. He wants to have kids. And I said, look, not that we're making the same thing, but I'm going by your goals. What does he do for a living? And it's like, she didn't want to tell me, and goes, well, he works at Cabela's. It's a sporting goods place.
Okay.
Nothing wrong with that. I said, is he the owner or manager of the Cabela's? And she goes, no. I said, so again, no problem dating him. I'm glad you can date him. But remember, your goal was to date somebody. And she said, I know that's the problem. I'm stuck in this wheelhouse because the other guys, because we talked about ways she can meet people that are more successful, the areas to go. She said, but I end up just sort of dating the same guy. And the realization, I mean, I saw her for a while and she left. I don't know the outcome of that, but it was almost an addiction to some level.
It probably is an addiction, although I would say that it's an addiction to an aspect of herself. What that aspect is, I don't know. I mean, we'd have to know more about what her particulars were.
Yes.
But nevertheless, anytime that we exhibit a repetitive pattern, there's something in us that matches up with that pattern. That's why we're attracted to it in the first place.
Yes. I angered a friend years ago. I forgot her third boyfriend she was madly in love with that broke up with her at the 2-year mark. His name was Kevin. And so when she started dating, I met the new guy, and she said, I saw her later, and she said, what did you think of my date? I go, you mean Kevin 2? Is that Kevin number 2?
2.0, yeah.
Yeah, that didn't fly well with her whatsoever.
I wouldn't think. No, that would not fly well. Yeah.
Even though it ended up the same way Kevin 1 did. So,
yeah.
But it isn't about making fun of people, but these are things, the patterns, and the chasing and the belief systems that are out there. And that's why your earlier podcast with your guests ties directly into this concept, because the programming and the subconscious programming of our belief system that keeps us stuck in these cycles. Dating is far worse than it was, in my mind, from what I'm seeing from my profession, than it was even 10 years ago.
Oh, I agree with that. Certainly. Well, it's definitely different from say 20, 30 years ago, because we now have the internet with the dating apps and all the social media and all that stuff. I think that a lot of the, I'll group them as toxic, which is a very negative label, but it's just my way of saying the stuff that does not serve us well in terms of trying to find appropriate people to be in relationship with.
Right.
That toxic pool of stuff has been around for generations. What the internet has done is, again, it has amplified. It has made it more obvious. It has put it more in our faces. So we're much more aware of it. And so we're more likely to act on it. And that's where the degradation has come from. The reduction of quality in the dating world has come from that amplification. And
also, and to tie into that, this popped randomly in my brain. I'll see if I can tie it in. It works great in my brain. I don't know if it's going to come out of my mouth right. But particularly the various like avoidant detachment personality people, the people that have the avoidant relationship styles, all those things are relevant, so when these things start to go bad, the avoidant just goes silent. So not only are we bringing that to the table, when we realize it's been brought to the table again, instead of addressing and moving on, you just go silent with it, and it that the communication disappears entirely. So, yeah, 6 months into a relationship, you start noticing the same traits as the previous person, and then you have that avoidant relationship style. Then you're going to be like, oh, I'm not going to say anything, but you're going to be shocked in 6 months when it's over, because the same things are going to happen again.
Which to me brings to the fore the most important point where relationships are concerned, and indeed where this whole concept of not chasing is concerned. Because I personally believe, and I think you're probably on board with this, I personally believe that there are two words that are pretty much two sides of the same coin that are the most important thing in any relationship. And those two words are communication and connection.
Absolutely.
And they're really just two ways of saying the same thing. If you aren't developing communication and connection from the very moment that you're meeting somebody and trying to figure out, is this somebody that I want to spend time with? Well, however amount of time you have in mind, maybe you only have in mind doing it for 6 months. But if you're especially looking for something that's long term, you got to start doing it from the beginning. And one of the things that really bothers me about what I see being taught, particularly to single males, especially to young single males, but really to all single males, by a lot of the teachers out there, is you don't do anything to try to move the relationship forward until she initiates it. And that was the point that I made to my guest earlier today. When I said that, you should have seen how wide her eyes got, and she was absolutely shocked by it.
Yeah.
But literally, that message gets out there a lot. And that is a very harmful message, because it prevents the exact process you need to have, which is to develop the communication and the connection.
The communication, particularly the ability to have difficult conversations. That's the most people really, I think, there's nobody more blunt than me, and I have difficult conversations 20 times a day, but it's difficult by definition. They're hard to have. And, we're having a difficult conversation, particularly in a relationship, and you don't know the reaction. So that creates that. So communication in general, but taking it up further, the ability, because there is no relationship that's perfect. There's no, the patterns of behavior, every relationship you have goes in, parts of that goes into your new relationship, and the other side has the same thing. So there's a lot of triggering effects there. So the ability to discuss it openly, have those hard conversations, but lovingly be able to move on is really the sort of the gold standard for good relationships. But we may be in our worst time communicating, because a lot of the messages that are being told about, well, they're like, one of the most baffling things I heard, one of my clients one time, she's really into this guy. They were dating for a while, and he was clearly really into her. And it was just this weird, like, have you told her? I said, have you told him you loved him? And she goes, oh, I would never say that first. Mm. And I'm like, well, what if he's thinking the same thing? And he said, well, I guess we'll never tell you. I'm like, okay. I mean, yeah. And it was just this thing. I said, well, I really think that's, I just can't imagine that if you really feel that way. She said, but wouldn't it be terrible if he didn't agree? I go, first of all, he's going to agree. Well, say it back, because he wouldn't be doing all this if he didn't. But second, you can spend, what are we going to do? Just wait on this for about 5 years because both of you avoided saying that conversation? I don't know what you do with that.
That's a very, very important point. I think a lot of it does come from that lack of self-confidence, self-esteem we were talking about before. But I think you're also right that I don't know if you were intending to say this, but I kind of read it this way. It's tied into the whole masculine feminine mystique.
Oh, yeah.
And that if you want to be in your feminine or be in your masculine, depending on your point of view on that, you have to follow the rules about how that kind of thing should work. So the masculine, according to the way, at least the feminine in this case, defines it, is the masculine has to be the one who says it first, which terrifies the male.
Well, and when these are differences. So back in my dating prime, and I'm not saying these were good things. When I picked up a date, I went and knocked on the door. I opened the car door. If we went out to dinner, I paid for that. And I'm not saying that, it sounds weird to say it today,
I
there
still
was
do it. Yeah.
there was never a scenario where we're splitting a check. It was just I paid, the guy paid. If we're
Hmm.
walking on the street, I'm my body's against the road. It's these
Same
these
thing.
these were things that were standard. I opened the car door. I opened the door going into a restaurant.
Right.
And that was maybe was that I just thought that's how we did it. And it's today it's just viewed. They don't do that. They pull up, I'm text them I'm here, and they hop in the car. It's like, wow.
Yeah. Well, there are a lot of different ways to express masculinity and femininity.
Yeah.
The old ways work very nicely. That's
Yeah.
one good thing. Despite all of the changes and so forth, they still work. They're
Yes.
still effective for any age. Doesn't matter what your age is, what your level of experience is, makes no difference. It works for everybody.
Yeah.
So, if you're really not sure what to do, you use the old system. It works well.
Yeah. When I'm coaching my clients, I'm not going to ask them to do something that's so outside of the norm now. And things are more expensive, and I understand splitting bills and sometimes, but
Mhm.
if I pay for dinner everywhere I go. I mean, if you I pay for dinner. That's just what I do, and
Mhm.
it's I can, and I enjoy doing that. But the idea that I want to sit there and say, "Well, your half is $55," that would have been horrifying back in the day.
Yeah, that wasn't done. That's true.
Yeah, and yeah, but again, it's just the whole key communication, the subconscious programming, and self-esteem. So the wrap up and the good news is working on your self-esteem, working on your communication style. Then the chasing isn't necessary because you're able to attract what you're really after. Then that's how you sustain a relationship, being able to have the hard conversations. This
Mm,
upset me. This bothered me. Uh,
yeah.
I know you didn't mean to do that, or maybe you did, but this bothered me. And just being able to have those conversations. And I've seen relationships just end in silence. People just quit talking.
That terrifies me, actually.
Yeah,
Hearing that story just terrifies me. It just reinforces for me how important communication is.
yeah.
But yeah, maybe that's what some people need to hear. Like, communication doesn't happen unless you decide to make it happen. So make it happen.
Somebody has to be that role, and preferably both people are. And I always encourage young couples. Let's start with the ground rules of communication. Let's get here.
Mm,
What makes you uncomfortable? So if something's happening, let's say it early. Let's say it early so we can. If this is a deal breaker, let's don't get too deep here. Or can the other person work on it? Let's figure out what it is.
By the way, this also ties in very nicely, on the other hand. It ties in very nicely to the topic. The topic is to stop chasing.
Yes.
Well, one of the best ways to stop chasing is when you actually are in contact with somebody that you have some interested in. Communication, great
Yeah.
way to make sure you don't ever have to chase again.
Well, I like to have, I've had back in the day some crazy breakups, but I care about this person at one point. You care about somebody at one point, even if you don't care about them toward the end. If you lost, you're not in love anymore. But the ability to end kindly, to have feelings about, that, be able to discuss it. It's really important. I mean, it's just a general kindness that, again, not everybody's allowed that closure sometimes. So some relationships ended on in closure, by the way. I'm not a big fan of that term, but they're not allowed the ability to really understand what happened. It's from their perspective, things were going great and you broke up with me. Can I know why?
Yeah, I love actually the other term you use, kindness. So
Okay.
we could have done a large chunk of the show on that. We didn't even touch on that one.
Yes.
So maybe we can
Yeah,
save that for another day. But kindness
absolutely.
is huge. It's way underrated today.
Oh,
Way
and being kind to everybody. It's just, kindness right now it's wild, but
Mm,
how unkind so many people are today. It's just, you
it's
know,
astonishing.
yeah. And I'm not affected by that generally. I as you know, I speak to everybody. I smile. I could
Mhm.
care less if anybody speaks back. Me, I just keep walking around smiling. And some people do, some people don't. And I'm not doing it for them. I'm doing it for me.
Yeah, yeah, very important point. Well, good stuff. I like the way we did the follow up to the previous show. I love the topic. It was a good topic, and thanks for posting that so that we have it as a topic. It was very much appreciated.
Fantastic. Well, I'll see you next week.
All right. We'll see all of our podcast listeners everywhere next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.